Hello and welcome to this episode of A House in France. My name's Mark Johnson. This has been recorded on the 16th of December 2010 and I'm not on my own, I'm with my co-host Lloyd Arrow. So very good afternoon to you, Lloyd. How are you? And any news from climates further south?
Hello, Mark, and welcome. No news on the house as from the last episode. No surprise, really. And to be honest, I don't expect to see anything this side of Christmas. Although I've heard that there was snow on the ground from my friend who lives a few hours north of me. I think you mentioned in the last episode that you had some issues on your last trip to Europe.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we're recording this on the 16th. When did we have that heavy snow here in England? About 2 weeks ago. In fact, the last bits of that only disappeared today. And the forecast, of course, is we're going to get more tonight. But 2 weeks ago, we were due to actually fly down to Spain. And we got held up at Southampton Airport for 8.5 hours. And I did take some little bit of video. When we eventually were ready to go, we saw them de-icing the plane. And I haven't seen this done before. Last time I saw a plane being de-iced was in Chicago in the middle of the winter.
What's the brown stripe across the middle there?
Yeah, I was a bit worried at first that was rust, but it isn't. It looks like to me like they put a colorant in the de-icer spray, so the guy knows where he's been spraying it. That's actually an Embraer. I think it's a 195 that Flybe fly on some of their longer routes. It's a very nice plane. But that's enough of that. But with snow forecast tonight, it might be a lot more people get to see planes being de-iced and travel delays, which is unfortunate, especially with Christmas coming up.
Absolutely.
So in this episode, we're going to look at budgeting and purchasing your property. We've talked about a couple of other things in previous episodes around what to look for. If you're you've got your heart set on buying a place, what sort of things should you think about? So Lloyd, from a budgeting perspective, what would you suggest to people?
One of the options I looked at, in fact have used, is using a currency specialist, sometimes called a broker. They work slightly different to banks in the way they obtain their currencies. For instance, if you could save up to something like 4%. By using a currency broker as opposed to using a bank. Apparently, according to the Sunday Times, Britain's buying property abroad lost out on something like 1.8 billion because of high street banks offering a poor deal on their foreign exchange.
Okay.
It really does depend on your particular circumstance.
All right, so that's a good tip. But before we get to the currency exchange situation, what should people think about from a budget? 'Cause I remember when we were looking for houses, the price in the window wasn't always the price that you paid, right?
This is true because the way that property is advertised is slightly different from here in the UK, in that you have to allow for certain other things like the taxes, the notaire fees, which are a bit like your legal fees that you pay over here in the UK, but they aren't necessarily advertised in the actual price you see in the window, as it were.
Yeah, that's right. And I can't remember what the exact figure was, but I remember being surprised when we bought our place that I think it was about 15%. So what we actually had to pay was about 15% more than the vendor got for the house, because the estate agents in France tend to take between 6 and 10% by all accounts. That is normally included in the any prices you see in the window, but not always, but normally included. And as you say, then there are the notaires fees, and notaires work differently, of course, because the notaire represents both parties, the buyer and the seller. And that, to me, seems very strange. And I guess less contentious. So you'd think it would be a faster process, but our experience was it was actually just as slow in France to buy a place as it was in England. And then of course on top of that you've got all the various taxes. So what would you think? People need to sort of keep a 10 to 20% sort of figure in mind when sort of as a contingency on their purchase price.
Absolutely. I mean, I did mine in reverse in that I took my budget, took off 15%, and then what I was left with was actually what I had to go and buy with. So I did it kind of like in reverse analogy to that.
Right.
The other difference is also in that the fees that you pay on a new build are slightly less than you pay on an existing building. I think that would be fair to say, yes.
Yeah, there are some complicated things. 'Cause I think there's also the VAT as well, isn't there? I think on new builds, and there are some deals if you rent a place back. Some of these places you can buy, you can enter into rental agreements for 10 years where you only get it for so many weeks of the year. So I think the real advice here is be aware that there are some additional costs, and to make sure that you do find out pretty quickly what the final number is likely to be, because you don't want to find your dream home and then find that you can't afford it. That would be pretty pretty upsetting. So you mentioned a currency exchange specialist, and I started off using a bank, and it was okay, but then I did switch to one of the currency exchange specialists, and they did give me better rates. But what is how would you sort of talk about the banks and the currency specialists?
Again, much the same. After doing some research and speaking to the banks, although they were, let's say, very good by sort of previous standards, I still found that by using a broker, I certainly seem to get a better deal for it. Bearing in mind that there are different options that you can take. You can effectively have a prefixed exchange rate, let's say of today, and you can set that up for a particular amount, or indeed you can do what they call forecasting, whereby you can set a figure up from today and keep that figure with the currency agency for a set period of time. Anything up to 2 years, and with that, at least with the exchange rate fixed for that period of time, especially for myself, where the property is not going to be finished for another year. If I buy at today's rate, then at least if there is a dip in the exchange rate, then I can buy that up to 2 years with today's figure, and the price of the property effectively doesn't go up. There are different ways to do things. There are sort of variables to that, and exchange companies do have lots of options for each customer.
Yeah, that's good. I think there are various options. Maybe we'll just cover those in a second. But the other thing, of course, then when you've actually you've moved your sterling into euros, you've got it separate in your bank account there. And I remember sending a very large amount electronically to my French bank account, and was really thought that if something goes wrong here, there's an awful lot of money that's going to disappear, but it didn't. The other thing that you need to think about is the regular bills, and what you can do with a lot of these currency specialists is to set up a monthly payment. I have that a set amount each month, and I have to say you don't get a fantastic rate on the deal. But you know that on the the 10th of the month or whatever, that you're going to have a fixed amount. I actually commit a fixed amount of sterling, so I get a very variable rate in euros. Obviously, or you can fix a rate in euros. You can say you want X hundred euros a month. And the other thing they do is that they have a low charge on it. So while the rate might not be good for a fairly small transaction, I think I only pay it's £7 for the electronic bank transfer. The other thing is that my bank does charge me to pay money in that way. So again, it's only, I think it's €2.30 or €2.50. So you do have to be careful that you know that all these charges. And maybe we'll talk about banks in France at some time in the future, Lloyd, because I think there's one or two little things that you need to know about. Banking is not free in France. I can tell you that. So these other options are things like forward contracts, currency options, hedging, etc. Lloyd, do you think people should look at those and talk those through with a specialist?
Yes, definitely. Forward contracting is probably the most common one that most people will look into initially. Currency options, as you say, is what they call a hedging structure. Allows you to protect yourself against adverse movements in the exchange rate, while still being able to benefit from changes in your favour. So at least you can fix a rate for that. And don't forget, there are a number of options available from brokers. So you need to be diligent and sort of look around and see what suits your particular circumstance.
Yeah. So hopefully we're giving people a few things to think about today. It is worth doing the research. So how do people find these places? Well, I mean, I found my original currency specialist through one of the magazines. The Living in France or Living France or whatever magazine. There are quite a few on. Obviously, all have their websites, and a couple that we'll just quickly look at. One that I actually happen to use is MoneyCorp, and go to moneycorp.com, and their website will list what you have to do to set up an account, because that's not always trivial. It isn't trivial. And another one that I tend to use for looking at rates. I actually have an account with them, but I haven't used them as yet. Is xe.com, and I go to xe.com all the time to see what the rates are. So these are the rates that were taken a couple of hours ago at around around 2:30 on the 16th of December. So you can see there that the euro's at 117.87, which is not fantastic, but that's a good 10 cents more than it was a couple of weeks ago. So that's a couple of places you can look at, a couple of websites to see. And Lloyd, you were mentioning something about, and I know this is happening because we had an inspector around to see our fosse septique recently. So what's happening in the wonderful world of septic tanks?
Septic tanks, yeah. Basically, originally due to be introduced in 2013, septic tank surveys would become a requirement for people selling their property as of the 1st of January 2011. So make sure you check before you buy, as it could have complications later on. I know there was an issue with somebody where the certificate wasn't issued at the time of sale, and it did cause them some legal nightmares, shall we say.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we've covered some interesting things. So people should look at exchange rates and currency conversion. Who do you use, by the way, for your currency?
I use a couple of people. One being TorFX, and another one called HIFX or HiFX, depending on how you want to look at that. I've used both for short and for large amounts as well.
Okay, all right. Well, that's it. I think another episode is in the bag. We should wish everybody Joyeux Noël, Happy Christmas. And I didn't let Lloyd say goodbye last time. So Lloyd, I'll leave you to close it, and just make sure that people can send us emails if they want us to cover anything to ahif@ttfn.tv. So to say goodbye.
Merci, au revoir, bonne année.
Have a happy Christmas.